Hey everyone, I'm Danny Feldman. I'm the producing artistic director of the Pasadena Playhouse, but today I have the pleasure of talking to my good friend Jim McCarthy about his new book. Hi Jim.
Hi Danny, how's it going?
It's going great. I want to introduce you first though.
Oh yes.
Many of us know Jim as the co-founder and CEO of Gold Star. Obviously, he led a team that generated billions of dollars in ticket sales for live venues all around the country, everywhere, and you help tens of millions of ticket buyers find events to go to. But of course, you've been a live entertainment pioneer and innovator, and I know you through many of our conversations as well for 2 decades now. And also now currently the co-founder and CEO of Stellar. But when the pandemic shut down, you really jumped to it, let's just say, and you created Stellar in the midst of a pandemic to help generate real revenue with quality shows for so many organizations. Little known facts or known facts to some watching, you're also the co-organizer and lead curator of TEDx Broadway. I didn't realize you were an adjunct professor of entrepreneurship at USC, so
Yes,
that is thrilling.
true.
And in our capacity, I know you as a trustee at the Pasadena Playhouse, just right around the corner from where we are. I'm excited to be here. Thank you for being here with me and inviting me to come talk to you about your exciting book.
Thanks for doing this today. I
Of
really
course,
appreciate it.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I want to jump into it. You decided to write a book in the midst of everything. Why? Let's start with that. That's a good question.
Yeah, well, so, I think every story about this has to start with March of 2020, which was, if you were in the live business, the month you won't forget if you were here. And this was a time when, as you'll well recall, it wasn't just stopping completely, it was going backwards because we had this whole issue of refunding all the tickets and canceling all the shows that were scheduled, which was months and months and months of shows. And I think during that period where the whole industry was not doing what it normally does, which is putting on shows, and running rapidly in reverse, it was pretty, I think you'll attest.
Intense. We're having PTSD right now from thinking about it.
And so on some level, really and truly, I wrote this book for the people who were in the live entertainment business then, and then the people that followed them. And I think especially for them then.
Yeah.
I really think it was a question of, what would the response of the people in that situation be, and what did they do to keep the lights on, which is the way I put it in the dedication of the book.
Yeah.
It was really, a moment where you feel like we have to do something. And what people did was they invented a new medium, which is live, online live events, or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
People call it different things, streaming live events. And it's more than just, and what emerged from it was more than just a way to get through the pandemic, which I think it did serve that purpose, but it's really just opened a door to possibilities and opportunities for live event producers that just weren't there before. And it's been such a complicated and emotionally intense time if you're a live event creator or marketer or performer or artist, that I felt it was really important to write a book for people who just wanted to get their minds around the core issues of what is this? What do I do about it? What is the opportunity like for me? And where do I go from here? So I felt that it was, it's a thin book. It's a quick read, but it's not insubstantial. Like I try to just lay out in 3 sections, why should you do this? How do you do it? And what should you do? Like, what should you create?
Yeah.
And I think it's really just a beginning. I think of it as a primer. If you are a live event creator, or if you're interested in being a live event creator, if you read this book, you're going to have a pretty good grounding in all that stuff.
I fully agree with that and how you approached it. I think so. I think what's so unique about it though is that we're all still emerging from this situation and still getting our heads around it. We're deep in it still.
Yes.
And many of us on the producing end of it are, coming either to the end or in the midst of our first season back, where we're just trying to make it through. Yep. And I think what the book really grounds the conversation on of what did we just learn from this?
Yes.
What are the best practices, but what doors did it open?
Yes.
This was not just, if you look at it as just a transition until we got back, that's a very narrow way of thinking and ignoring a lot of what we learned from it. And you also said in the beginning of the book, I wrote this for those who want the future to be bigger than the past, which was very profound to me. And I think people watching, probably everyone wants the future to be bigger than the past in the art form. There's a great story at the beginning of the book that talks about this as an awakening, and it gets to that point of how are we looking at things now differently than we have in the past? You don't have to talk about the story, but talk about a little bit about this moment for so many of us.
Yes, I mean I can't remember which exact story. Which story are you talking about?
The story of the lion and yes,
yeah.
It's a beautiful story.
This is a great story. So Anthony DeMello is one of my favorite, I guess, the thinkers or whatever. And there's a story that he tells about a lion cub who finds himself being raised in a what do you call it? Flock?
Yes,
a flock of sheep.
Yes, that's exactly.
The lion cub is being raised among a flock of sheep, and he's just running around as though he's a sheep. His whole life, and he gets to a certain age, and so the lion, an adult lion, shows up, and the sheep just run. They just run in terror, including this little lion cub, and the adult lion picks him up and says, "What are you doing?" And he says, "What are you talking about? You're a lion. I'm a sheep. You're going to eat me." And he takes the cub over to the water, and he says, "Look at yourself. You're a lion." and the cub goes
awakening.
Like,
yes.
I am a lion. And I say that because I use that story because I think when we just think about the heroic work that goes into making great live events. I mean, it's really hard. It's really hard. Just all the things that can go wrong and all the things that it takes to bring, let's say, 25,000 people into a building. Or I was at Dodger Stadium for the Home Run Derby last night. 50,000 people into a building. Not only does everyone go in and come out promptly and safely, and they get fed, they get they're comfortable, but they have a great time, right? There's a show, and so all of that work, the message of that is that the people in this industry in every part of it are capable of the work of lions. This is the work of lions, right? But sometimes we feel a little bit like sheep, I think, in comparison to TV or movies or things like that.
Yeah.
Right. So I think the awakening is, you could have 1 million people in your audience.
That's right. I think so many of us got a little bit of a taste of that during some of our streaming things, and I think I found that anecdote to be very centering in terms of picking my head up from my day-to-day of what was going on to really connect to that.
Well, the other thing I did, and I mentioned in the book, and I really did do this, was I took, and this relates to you. This involves you. I took a paper clip, and I imagined that it was 100 people, and then I put 7 paper clips, a row of 5, and then 2, and that was the Playhouse, the Pasadena Playhouse, right here in the Playhouse district of Pasadena, Playhouse Village.
Playhouse Village, where we've rebranded.
Right here where we are. And so I was imagining those 700 people, and I could actually imagine that number of people, right? So then I started thinking, well, okay, if that's one Playhouse, and I would literally lay out paper clips on the table, and I made myself a Staples Center, which is, or I guess it's crypto.com. But at the time I wrote it, it was Staples Center. And that took a whole bunch of Playhouses. That took, whatever it was, 30 or 40 Playhouses. Yeah. And so that was like, this much of my desk covered in paper clips. And then I thought about the online concert that BTS did in October of 2020. So this is a real thing that happened. They had 1 million people watching their show. Yep. And I thought to myself, like, I could lay out 1 million, and I was like, no, I'm not going to do that, because it would have taken like the whole table. But really, the idea of 1 million people in your audience is not at all unrealistic. And obviously, not everybody's BTS, but there's a lot more people than 1 million. It's just the numbers get
the
big,
scalability.
Yeah.
You got into so you talked you I think the book is very neatly divided into the 3 sort of sections, right, of why and how. And so when you talk about the why, what resistance have you heard from folks, because you're in the community like I'm in the community, and what are the barriers that when you present a book like this or have a conversation about an idea like this, what have you heard that people have put up obstacles or told you you're wrong, and why are they wrong?
Well, I don't know that people have said that I'm wrong, but I think people have said reasons why it's hard for them.
Yes. Good distinction. Yes.
And that's, I don't condemn that. You know what I mean? It's really, you got to go at your own pace with this thing. Some people are naturally a little more innovative than others.
Yeah.
Some people see the opportunity, they see the through line from where we are. And some people, I mean, one person put it to me in a way that I thought was really great. We've kind of leaped forward with this technology. Like, I don't think we were going to get, had there been no pandemic, we wouldn't have gotten where we got. So it's kind of like we lurched forward several years. And some people just need a little time to catch up. and in the midst of everything else, right? In the midst of all the other challenges of just being in this crazy, business in the last couple of years. So I think, I can't remember exactly how this quote goes, but the future's already here. It's just unevenly distributed. Right. Some people are there, and but so I think a lot of times people's answers come out of a certain sense of like, what do I do? Like, I'm not sure. I mean, they'll say things like, they'll ask the cannibalization question. This is one of these ones that I just, this is one that I try to remain patient with because.
Please try today.
Yeah, I definitely will. There's an example in the book about the NBA. I don't know, if you recall that one, but the thought experiment is the NBA better off or worse off because you can see the games on TV? You could imagine a world where somebody says, and this is in the book, hey, what we ought to do now that the NBA is super popular, after almost going out of business in the 70s and the 80s, imagine, right? Super popular all of a sudden. What we ought to do is take the games off TV. Because why? Because we don't want to cannibalize the
paid audience.
The paid audience in the arena, right?
Yeah.
Which, anybody can sort of see that that's absurd. It just so happens that that's the current reality versus the current reality in the world that we live in is the opposite of that, right? So, and I don't think people so much believe that that's true as that they worry about that, or they worry about the general, the unknowns of the future. People worry correctly about how do I sell it and how do I make it, and what do I do, right? There's no slam dunk answer to how do you successfully market this today.
Right.
It's just marketing work that needs to be done. That's all, right? Yeah. The big difference is that for someone who's good at marketing live entertainment or arts like you, that happens at a local level, right? The marketing that we do for the Playhouse, for example, is
speaking to people who could drive here.
Speaking to people who could drive here, and the very occasional person, and depending on the venue, right? Broadway has the remote audience, right? But even that mostly is a local audience. But with online and with hybrid, you have an audience literally everywhere. So the marketing that you do is a little outside the current skill set of most live entertainment marketers, but it's not outside the skill set of the world of marketers in general. It's very familiar to many other people. So it's legitimate to say, like, can I sell it? How do I make it? Is it expensive to make? Do I have the capabilities to make it? And from my point of view, it's just a question of like walking through and saying, how do I develop these relatively modest new skills?
So the first section of the book is the why of this, and then you get into the how. What are your key tenets or your key lessons on the how for others, or how do you approach the thinking on it?
Yeah, so we talk about the technical side in the book. The technical side is less difficult than you think. Right? I mean, this is the thing where, if you have people running, if you're in a venue big enough to have sound and light and stuff like that, I guarantee the people doing that have a lot of the skills. They may not be using them, during your show, but they're
technology has brought us much closer to the possibility.
That's right. And if they don't, then they're not hard to find, right? And or you're going to have a lot of people very eager to add those skills to the skill set. Marketing is a big part of it. Marketing is a big part of being able to do this sustainably, right? If you can build, I guess you have to think of it as, how do I build the sort of digital asset of a marketing base? That's a new challenge. And then, the other thing we talk about on how, which I think is a really fascinating topic, is before you get to like, what am I going to put on the screen, there are some basics that are worth knowing about what not to do. And one thing not to do is to point a camera at the thing that you were going to do anyway, right?
Yes. How it's simply capturing the thing you're doing already and not innovating it or changing it specifically for that audience.
Or just even thinking of it as something that's going to go out on a screen.
Yes.
And the one way that I make a comparison there is like archiving, right? So in the theater world, there are archival recordings of various shows, and the purpose of that, well, you tell me, what is the purpose of archiving?
To mark something it's never going to happen.
It's never
for public consumption. Some theaters actually, in the beginning of the pandemic, negotiated being able to stream those. And they were very
terrible,
archival in nature. They were very flat, and they weren't designed for that purpose. They're for reference.
That's right.
Like the Lincoln Center Library or other things.
Yeah, that's right. And of course, the value of that from a historical point of view is there. But that's not what not what we're talking about.
Absolutely.
Even if you don't really materially change the content, you're talking about, first of all, multiple cameras, right? Even in this little shoot that we're doing today, there's 3 cameras. right? And what happens if you're watching that is that the energy and the flow of what's happening just, it's obvious to you.
Yeah.
Well, you might not notice it, but it's just obvious. If there was just one camera on us the whole time, it would feel, low energy. And it's the same thing. So cameras, it's also just the idea that this is going on a screen, right? And that brings a lot of possibilities, and it brings some limitations. But it's something that you just have to think through. What you don't want to do is what I call in the book radio on television, right?
Yeah.
Which is, a lot of the big radio shows when television was invented in the late 40s just came straight over to TV. And they basically did the same show.
No innovation,
but
no
on
changing
TV.
for that.
You're right.
Yes.
And but other people didn't. And the best example that I think one of the best things you'll ever watch is the Lucy in the chocolate. I guess
Chocolate
factory, the
yeah.
chocolate factory.
Yep.
So Lucy's trying to package up the chocolate. Lucy and Ethel are trying to package up the chocolate, and it's utterly ridiculous.
Yes.
And as I say to my kids, a clown is somebody who comes up with really terrible solutions to problems. So Lucy and Ethel come up with terrible solutions
To how to solve this conveyor
problem.
belt. Yeah.
And it's the funniest thing, and this is 1952.
Yep.
So this is at the dawn of television. You could never have done that on radio.
Radio. Yep.
It wouldn't have, and Lucy was on radio.
Yep.
Popular on the radio, but you could never have done that on radio. They had to do something new, and they absolutely nailed it. Right? It didn't take them long to sort of make that transition to like, okay, what do we do?
It's an interesting comparison of that moment
Yes.
of the birth of television
Yes.
and where we are now with streaming live events.
And they had the benefit of movies.
Yes.
It wasn't like they were inventing from scratch.
Yes,
They had
yes,
the benefit
yes.
of movies. In the exact same way, we have the benefit of all the other forms of video that exist. So
Yeah.
it's not, it's just, I guess what I want to say about the how part of it is, it's not as big of a stretch as you might imagine or fear, right? It's just thinking through, what are the things that make it exciting and fun to watch?
It's not simply a one-to-one. I mean, I think that's sort of my
Yes.
my takeaway of that when you're in the audience of a live event, you are the curator. Your eye gets to choose where it wants to go.
Yes.
But there's for something on a screen, there's another level, and you can't ignore that other step.
That's right.
It's sort
That's
of
right.
how
and it is an opportunity and a challenge. I mean, I can imagine as a person who produces shows on the stage, you got to take account of that. Anybody could look anywhere they want.
That's right.
Right.
That's right.
But on this, you're making that decision for them.
Well, we do director steer through lighting or steer through performance, but there's a different editor or someone involved in that. I want to move onto the practical, but one of the most successful streaming events during the pandemic, I believe it was December 2020.
Jagged?
Yes, so very early, was Jagged Little Pill live Broadway reunion concert. So this was awesome and extraordinary and broke through in a really profound way with everything that was going on at that time. Why? What were the ingredients of this?
One of the things was that I think it was the first live thing back on Broadway or in the Broadway world, if not the first, it was one of the very first, and it was certainly the most ambitious thing.
Largest in scale for sure.
Yeah, and so it was the entire cast or nearly the entire cast of Jagged Little Pill, and essentially singing the songs of the show, also known as the songs of Jagged Little Pill by Alanis Morissette, which you start with pretty good material there. And then Eva Price and Arvind and the rest of that crew just really threw themselves into making this a fun and exciting show. And so, 20,000 people watched it, which, how many people are in the, I can't remember. But anyway, it's something on the order of 15 times the number of people who would watch that on a given night, watching it there. And it was, I think it was just what people needed at that moment. It was a great show. The cast really just went all out. One of the things I remember about that is people stayed in the chat, in the Stellar chat, for about an hour after the show was over, just talking to each other, and
it really felt like a blast of oxygen in that time of it pierced through in such a big way, particularly because of the live nature, I think, of it too, and it was unlike anything else going on there. And so how, when you think about that in, fast forward to today, would something like that still work? What are the tenets of that worked so well? Because I don't think it was just, I think there were certain things that we felt was new and different in that moment, but it still would work today very well, I think, in the same
the things that translate so well now are, is there, I think, first of all, people underestimate the value of the thing happening live. I really do. We hear this all the time, like, does it matter if it's live? I'm not saying something can't be successful if it's not, because obviously we stream a lot of non-live content, and there have been things that appeared live that weren't live and still kind of had that feeling. But the biggest things have been actually live.
Yep.
And it's the same principle that underlies why does everybody want to see the Super Bowl when it happens, not the next day? Well, because you have a sense of kinetic energy, right? Like it's happening now.
Being in the room where it
being
happens.
in the room
so
where it
to speak,
happens
yes.
to do the Hamilton thing. And that's still true. This other thing that's true is that I think they were doing more than just doing a performance. They kind of united a community of sorts. They united a fandom, and all over the world. You know, I mean, the one of the things I say in the book is that you know, a live event gives you a kind of peak experience, right? If you're in the room where it happens, you get the energy of being in it. It almost doesn't matter what it is to some degree, right? And then the internet in general gives you the ability to connect across space,
to scale quite
right?
large. Yeah.
So, but only live online events really give you the ability to combine those two things, right? To have a sense of a live experience that's sort of a peak experience and do it across distance. And so that still works. There's nothing about that that doesn't work. But I think, you know, having some point of community or some point of connection makes a big difference, you know. Who are you gathering? What tribe are you gathering? You know, and we saw that, you know, time and time again. It's still true today.
Absolutely. I think I mean, people watching, I think there's obviously these big concert events that have, you know, large audience or large followings, but Stellar has many different kinds of things on it, right? All different kinds of things. So that was a clip from a play called Herding Cats by Lucinda Coxon. What the heck were we just watching?
Yeah,
what was that?
It's amazing. So many things are happening in this clip. All of it was live when it happened. That's Greg German from Ally McBeal and so many other things. I know he's in a lot of other things, but that was actually filmed in the Gold Star office.
The kitchen.
The kitchen. Yeah. It was a set for a week, basically, the office, and also at the Soho Playhouse in London. So the actress on the other side of the line was in London, live in front of an audience at the Soho Playhouse. It was a live audience in the Soho Playhouse, looking at the actress who you saw, who was, and watching Greg German on the screen, who was live in the Pasadena
Gold
Playhouse.
Star office.
Yeah, right here in the once again the Playhouse Village. And what was so great about it was it was one of the first true hybrid things, but it was more than just a hybrid thing. It was like multi-leveled hybrid. So it was across time zones, across multiple sets,
multiple dimensions.
And it's won all kinds of awards. You know, it's so funny because it was such an innovation, but also if you think about you know, take a guy like Greg German, who's a great actor, being able to be leveraged into this production on the other side of the world. And have it all still be live. It's really quite something, you know. And it just shows you like how many different limitations you can just go. How often have you thought to yourself in producing a show here, I'd love to have that actor, too bad he's on the other side of the world. You know.
Well, but I think, I mean, the book is called Beyond the Back Row, but the byline is the breakthrough potential of digital live entertainment, right, in the arts and arts. But I think that to focus on the breakthrough potential part, right? I think that's what the argument you're sort of setting up of the possibility of expanding the horizons for what artists can come up with and create. And that's certainly one example of doing it in a really profoundly different way. What other examples are things that you have seen that have impressed you or caught your eye in terms of seeing people just sort of stretching, right, in this new possibility?
Well, I think we're going to see a clip later of I think, an organization, Fake Friends, that did something that's truly digital and hybrid native. So I will hold on. We'll
hold that. We'll do that.
Look
in a
at
second.
that. You know, we did a couple of events with Bruce Campbell, who was the star of the Evil Dead series. So for those of you who grew up in the 80s, you'll recall the Evil Dead series. And you know what he essentially did was watch the movie, which he made with Sam Raimi and Ethan Coen back in the 80s for like $8, and went on to make like $1 zillion. He watched the movie and tell stories about it. And you can't believe the kind of interactions that people had. So that's the kind of thing where it's a whole different kind of show.
Yeah.
You couldn't really do that, in person, or at least not in the same way.
Yeah,
and certainly
absolutely.
not with as big of a group. So I think when I talk about breakthrough, I'm talking about breakthroughs on multiple levels. I'm talking about breakthroughs artistically, which is kind of the sneakiest one of these.
Yep.
Because people don't think about that as much. You've got a whole new set of tools that enable you to do things, and it's not just the tools of television.
Yes,
right.
Exactly.
It's not just it's more than that, because you have the live element to play with. You've got breakthrough possibilities when it comes to reach, right? And a lot of people in the world of especially nonprofit and the arts, they're less about banking a ton of money and more about how do we expand the reach. And I think we should stick a pin in the concept of access and come back to it in a few minutes.
Yep.
And then the third is just the business model. Even if you're a nonprofit, you care about business model.
Yep.
There's a lot of things about live entertainment and arts that, from a business model point of view, are terrible. I refer to it as the business model of the damned.
Yes.
In the book.
Yes.
Because you've got let's just break this down. I don't want to traumatize you, but I think that's the risk I'm willing to run. Okay, so it costs a lot to put on a show, and it doesn't matter how many people show up.
That's right.
Like one or full, it's the same basic cost. Break even, typically, correct me if I'm wrong, 65 to 70%, let's say.
In the best case scenario,
Yeah,
yes.
sometimes worse.
Sometimes worse.
And then the worst thing I think of all is that if you get to break even after working your ass off to get up to 65 or 70%, just when it's getting good, bam, capacity, you're done. Right?
Yeah.
So you can do another show, and then you go all the way back to zero. But the thing about the hybrid model is it demolishes all those limitations.
Yeah.
It literally just demolishes them. Obviously, there's some incremental cost to doing that, but once you kind of master that, the costs come down, and once you master and create your digital marketing asset, your risks go down that you won't, justify. And what it does is, because there's no limit on what you can sell in the digital realm, there's no limit on the revenue. There's no hard cap on profits.
Yep.
So there's just some ways in which this is the relief, this is the breakthrough that we've been looking for for all these decades, right? Yeah. And I think it's just too good for people to pass up.
Yes.
Yeah.
I do want to go back to the circle jerk example, because it was also a piece that was a Pulitzer finalist, which we believe was the first time that was.
Yes.
So
and that is the really stress-free mixing and matching of what's on the screen with what's in the venue, the visual effects on the screen. There's a part of that where there's a tight zoom on the actress's eyes, and they didn't just do a zoom the way you would if you were just trying to get closer.
Yeah.
They did a zoom that's framed in a very artistic, specific way, and that's just like one shot after another throughout this. And then they go, and then you hear the audience, and it's all of a piece, right?
Yeah, it's seamless.
It's all of a piece.
Yeah.
And they even do things where there's an awareness. Like there's a scene where the AI who comes to life at the end of that scene is standing in front of a background that I can't even remember what it is, but she's standing there just blinking during intermission for about 10 minutes. And then later in the show, there's a camera shot where you see the actress and the whole backdrop behind her, and then so this kind of awareness that we're here in this venue, as as getting the digital.
It's self-aware in that way.
Yeah, it's really self-aware, and also we're going to get the tight end shot that is perfect on the screen, and we're going to make you aware of the fact that it's live. To me, this is just going to be obvious for creators that are perhaps a little
digital natives.
They don't even need to be told.
Yes,
right?
exactly.
Like they're gonna most of this at least the advisory stuff about how, and they're gonna go like duh.
We got this.
They would have summarized it as just duh.
I do want to circle back to the accessibility question.
Yeah.
There are multiple levels of that, of course.
There really are.
At the highest level, from my example of many regional theaters around the country, because of agreements with the unions, with the actors union in particular, and then our other unions, were able to stream during COVID as some amendments to the rules for the first time. And that, I travel to a lot of different theaters every year to see plays. And this year, the number of shows I've seen has quadrupled because I have watched shows at Baltimore Center Stage. I've watched streaming shows from home.
Yep.
And so that's one level of access, but there's also the level of access of even people within your community that might not be able to come to your theater for whatever reason or your event. And this opens a door much wider than we've ever thought of before, and that's so important to so many people. So how do you think of that as going to change the field? It's a critically important thing to all of us right now.
I think, and without being, too harsh about this, I think it's a gut check, or it's kind of a reality check. Do you mean it or not to the people in our field? And if you're serious about access and you're not taking digital on board, or if you're even negative about digital, you're not serious about access. I mean, this is where, I try not to get on too much of a soapbox here, but I have heard people hold both views at the same time, and my only conclusion is, well, you're not really serious about access. You really want people to come to you in a very specific kind of way, which means that you don't really care whether they have access, right? So you're right. Access means a lot of things. The first thing to say is, like, you and I and all of us maybe don't have some of the access limitations, but we certainly have access limitations when it comes to stuff that's happening in other places, right?
That's right.
One of the examples I give in the book is the hypothetical world's best small theater. Right? Whoever you think that might be, the world's greatest small theater, would you like to be able to watch their shows?
Without question.
Of course you would, right? But you probably can't.
Yes.
Or maybe you can, but
a little bit.
Who knows?
Starting to, but no, we're probably not.
See the point, right? Like in a world where digital's not available, if they don't happen to be in your town, how much ever you're interested in that. But there's clearly an audience for that kind of thing, right? So that's one level of access. Another level of access, of course, is income, right? And we talk about this all the time. And I mean, it's expensive to go to shows. It's really expensive. And it's not even to say, oh, it's necessarily low income people. It's just that if you want people to go to, or if you want people to experience an artistic live presentation 20 times a year instead of 2, there's a way to make that possible. And then the third is things like, limitations on either health concerns or actual limitations of being able to go somewhere comfortably or whatever, limitations on, visual and hearing and all the other things that we talk about. If a person who's in the position to create and market and put into the world live presentation, if they're serious about access, digital is a gift, right?
Walk the walk.
It's you walk the walk, and B, there's a way to walk the walk. And I think I feel as though there's a lot of or there's a what's the word I'm looking for? A wellspring of support for that, and it has to be tapped into.
Yeah, absolutely. If anyone in the chat has questions, by the way, now's a great time to put it in. They'll get relayed to me. But one question for you, Jim, of if you really fly up to if you're really looking at the future of what we're talking about here, what you're teeing up and the potential, paint for me the world you see. How do you see this? I don't know, 10 years, 20 years down. What are we at the beginning of, and what does that ecosystem look like?
Yeah, I mean, I think invention is the thing that comes to mind for me. The great thing about the hybrid world is that you don't have to give anything up, right? There's nothing, there's no sacrifice to be made in terms of the way that we enjoy going to the theater today. There's nothing to be sacrificed. There's no, it's not either or.
There's not a trade,
And the whole either or thinking is something that's just like, I talk about this in the book too, like, just like, stop it.
Stop it,
right?
exactly.
Like, there's no either or. But it opens the door to invention, and I think it does issue a challenge of sorts, because it may be that some of the leaders or some of the incumbents in the space do have to kind of rise to the challenge from an artistic point of view. I said in the book, I think this is likely to be true, that the world's largest and most influential live entertainment organization 5 years from now may not exist today, or it may be embryonic today, because the potential to run past everybody, and I mean everybody, very rapidly with digital tools is there. We've seen it. It happens over and over and over again. So that I think it does. I talk about Napster in the book, and the difference between Napster and this is that Napster really was a zero-sum thing for the recorded music business. This is not that. Let's say, I mean, this is sort of, again, putting it sort of in terms of the work that you do and that I help you support you in at the Playhouse.
You help,
If
yes.
there was a theater organization in LA or wherever that had 5 million people that regularly watched it,
Yeah.
it wouldn't necessarily harm what we did,
Yes,
but would be a counterweight,
be
right? It would be a
yeah.
different sort of thing to contend with.
Yeah, the scalability, is, to your point, is there. I mean, I'm thinking on prior to pandemic, we did a show with a performance on a national television show.
Yes.
And it has had millions and millions and millions of views. And
Yes.
it sort of blows our mind when we think we started with a little show here and that expanded. And
Yeah.
that was a clip. That wasn't even
the whole
the
show. Yeah, that's
in
right.
that way. So I think we all feel that and see that.
You know, and you know, for the people in the Broadway sort of ecosystem here, I think there's a sort of a little bit of a sometimes people look down on the broadcast musicals that happen every
Yeah.
however often.
But they're getting. Yes.
Yeah, even the ones that don't
Grease
do
Live,
that
you
well,
were
Grease
explaining,
Live, yeah.
yeah.
I can't remember the exact numbers, but it's basically the same number of people watch that as went to Broadway.
That entire
the entire
year.
year, you
The
know,
entire year.
and that wasn't even particularly a hit on TV, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, you just have to think in terms of
Yeah.
these numbers and how do you harness them?
Yeah, expands from the position we're in now. What has this opened up to us to really
Yes.
see and think different about it?
And I think it's one of these things where if someone watches this conversation in 10 years, they might be saying, why are they even like, isn't this a no-brainer? You know,
I
like,
hope so.
don't, I mean, like, wasn't it obvious to them? And I think it is, you know.
Yes.
And I was at a venue where the show was live and the show was on sale, the Bourbon Room in Hollywood.
Yeah.
And I happened to be sitting next to someone who said, she didn't know who I was. She said, why don't all venues do this? It seems like a no-brainer. I said, I agree with you, as a matter of fact.
It's just starting.
Here's
Any,
here's
yes,
the copy of my
Here's
book,
the
right?
copy of the book.
Exactly.
Where can folks get this book? How can we get this book?
Well, it's
Beyond the Back Row.
It's
yes.
it's on Amazon and Kindle and elsewhere, Barnes and Noble, all the
places
all
you
the
can
places.
get books.
Yeah, all those places.
Wonderful.
And
Any final words?
I would say if you're in the business of creating live events, then you should read the book, because then you'll be ahead of 99% of the people that when it comes to this. And if you're not, if you're somebody who's thinking to themselves, you know, this is an industry I'd like to be part of and I feel like I've got a talent for it, read the book, because I think it's going to hopefully validate for you that that's a possibility, and we need you. We need their innovation, don't we, Danny? We need the people who are out there thinking, like, to me, the digital pathway into this seems very, very promising and very bright. We need you to be in there. And so whether you read the book or not, please do all that. But this book should give you the grounding that you need to really get your mind around digital and hybrid live events. And I hope you get something out of it.
Well, thank you, Jim.
Thank you,
It was lovely
Danny.
talking to you about this, and please, everyone, read the book. Thank you for joining us. Have a good rest of the day.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.